So thank you, Sasha. I always forget to do that, and I'm thankful that he keeps reminding me. Want to just go through the agenda real quick, and then we'll dive into the focus area. We're going to spend some time just in terms of introductions. If you don't mind, just going to the chat, putting your name in and the organization you're with, and that would be great. You know, usually we can go through 5 or 10 minutes, but I want to preserve the time for the presentations and discussion to follow. We'll be talking some about San Luis Obispo and the county. As I mentioned in previous meetings, we started with Santa Barbara County, and then we went to Ventura County in our last meeting, and this time it's San Luis Obispo County. Have some updates for you related to the middle mile discussion. It's fascinating. The maps have changed in the last week or so, and I've got a quick look on some of that and can forward that information to you. The last mile landscape, a lot of active conversation there, and we'll be talking about that and looking at some of the things happening. I'm going to just spend a minute or two talking about Smart City, and then we'll really open it up and let everybody share and talk about some of the things going on and exchange notes. So that's our meeting. And with that, I'm going to turn this meeting over to Maria Kelly. Now, what's happened a lot in the consortia in the last 12 months has been where it was Sasha and myself in the south trying to do the north. Maria has joined us up in the north, and she's been very, very helpful in terms of the relationship she has, the organization she's part of, and pulling us all together. And so we really do have this north-south kind of center, you know, and we meet in the middle in Santa Barbara and do Santa Barbara together, but it's working really, really well for us. And we're excited about some of the things we're learning and a lot of the things we're doing. And so with that, Maria, I'm gonna, you're introduced and let you moderate and talk about the 3 presentation areas that we've discussed and move forward.
Thanks, Bill. Good morning, everybody. I'm super excited to be focused on San Luis Obispo County today. It's kind of exciting. We're getting ready to get going. So first, love to hear from Lorelei. She's here representing the city of Atascadero, but also Paso, and talk a little bit about what they're doing in collaboration as far as approach to strategy development and data collection and things that they're going to need to get together to build out the data that they need to figure out what their needs.
Great, thank you, Maria. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. So I have just a brief update for you all. It's been exciting times here and full of lots of collaboration. So I know our city managers and mayors have all been talking about how do we get this broadband train rolling full speed ahead, and how do we work together or collaborate on our disparate efforts. So the cities of Atascadero and Paso Robles have been in conversations for quite some time, as far back as a year ago, just looking to see how we could support them in their broadband grant that they had, the city of Paso Robles had procured from the EDA last year. Just because anything that lifts our North County region or county in general is great for us. So we decided to enter into a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, that says we would like to work together on a project. That project would be a broadband strategic plan that would help us understand what our problem is, really. Like, what is the gap, what is the problem, and how do we solve it, and what's the best thing for our various communities. Paso's needs and Atascadero's needs may be different, but the goal is the same. And we also want to, of course, make sure that we're aligned for any funding when it's released, so we can do more together and have bigger projects between the two of us. Of course, we have unincorporated area in between us. And so we've been in conversations with Laura Fiedler at the county, and we've also talked with SLOCOG as well, just to kind of keep our finger on the pulse of what everybody's doing. But as of the 5th of April, the Memorandum of Understanding for a North County Broadband Strategic Plan was authorized by Paso Robles City Council. And they also allocated some funding, as well as the City Council for Atascadero on the 12th of this month also signed and authorized the signing of the MOU. So we are in the process of creating a request for proposals, and we will be working with our internal groups to see what each of our cities need out of this effort, to help us understand where we need to go and what we need to do to align for future funding and bigger broadband efforts, and who are our partners. we know who our providers are today. Are there other anchor institutions we should be collaborating? Are there assets under the ground, like empty water lines, pipelines that we should be aware of? And who, you know, working with our county office of education and other folks that really have a big vested interest in getting all of our people high speed, affordable fiber broadband. So that's the effort. We anticipate having a target date release of an RFP before the summer begins. We're in the process right now of working together to craft that RFP, make sure it meets all of our needs, and should have that off and running in the next couple months while we build our stakeholder list and work with the consortium, Maria and Bill and other friends, and keep in touch with our friends at the county and SLOCOG.
The traffic utility conduits.
Hi, Jory. So that is the overview for us. I'd love to answer any questions, but again, we're looking for anybody else in the county who's working on things that wants to provide input, wants to jump on board, or at least talk with us so we can understand how we all roll up into a much bigger strategy that connects to our friends in Santa Barbara County, for example, or up in Monterey County. So that's the overall goal.
Thanks, Lorelei. Super fun. It's really, you both, of course, you're really great to work with. I love working with you and Paul and talking all these things through, and I really appreciate the alignment with the broadband for all. Bill and I just got off another webinar, and it really is important to align with California Broadband for All to get funding here and moving forward. So, and next, I'm super excited to meet Kristen. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
She's going to fill us in on how Grover Beach and their public-private partnership, and you've got Tim Williams on here too. So she's going to share a little bit about what the unique approach that Grover's taking and how their approach to broadband.
Yeah, so pretty exciting news for Grover Beach. Our council recently approved a lease agreement to use our existing conduit infrastructure, and we're leasing it to Astound Media, which is one of the largest broadband providers, to build a citywide fiber optic high-speed broadband network. And so by this time next year, our entire city should have access to high-speed broadband, which is very exciting. We're going to be promoting it as it comes online, and we'll also be promoting the affordable connectivity funding that people can access so that households can get the access that they need. So yeah, very exciting. And hi, Tim. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, no, we're really excited about it too. And this has been a long relationship we've had with Grover Beach. This was really the first city we started establishing fiber outside of San Luis Obispo City. And so it's been great to see that the city staff and leadership there at the council really behind this. So we're excited about it.
That's super exciting. That's actually really exciting. It's a great, again, from the webinar today, there's about 5 or 6 different types of the public-private model, and this is one of them. It's build the conduit and then lease it out to the provider. So that's great. Maybe we'll see it in other communities around the area as well. And I noticed that Daniel's here. Welcome, Daniel from SLOCOG, and he's going to fill us in. Their board took an action to develop an action plan, and Daniel's going to fill us in on what the status is and what the approach is moving forward. Thanks, Daniel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Adello. I am a transportation planner at the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments. We're a metropolitan planning organization for the San Luis Obispo region, similar to what SBCAG is to the Santa Barbara County area. So as Maria said, our board took action to adopt a regional plan. Since the pandemic and a little earlier on, we were hearing a lot about broadband. Everyone wanted to get on, but then 2020 hit, and of course, there was a newfound reliance on high-speed internet connections so people can telecommute, go to school, and then also recreate. So they were doing a lot of Zoom hours with their Zoom happy hours or Zumba classes or what have you. And of course, everyone was saying, hey, my internet connection isn't really built to support all these activities. So there's a newfound reliance on that. And that's what we were hearing. And so that kind of spurred efforts on, I'm sure just more than just San Luis Obispo County, but for everyone, of course. And then so we talked about a plan, and we took more of a data analysis approach as our preliminary step just to see hey, what are the download speeds and upload speeds in our region to see where we need to facilitate development essentially. So we looked at Governor Newsom's executive order, 100 megabytes per second download speed. And then of course, the FCC defines broadband as 25 megabytes per upload speed. And we want to say, well, how are we doing against those download speeds? Because I believe SB 156 says you can consider a variety of data sources, not just the advertised speeds that the FCC has. Of course, the advertised speeds are going to be the best, but my anecdotal experience is you don't necessarily get those advertised speeds all the time, if at all. So we wanted to develop a picture using advertised speeds. And then so we looked at a few different data sources. We looked at Ookla, we looked at Measurement Lab, and we looked at some statistics from Microsoft as well, just so we can get a baseline of how our region is performing so we can go for grants with that data as opposed to just relying on advertised speed data saying, hey, our region's great when we know the reality may not be that excellent, of course. So our first step was putting all that together in a staff report so we can show our board. We took that on April 6th with a variety of maps. One comparing us against the FCC standard of 25 megabits per second, and then comparing us against what Governor Newsom's wanting state agencies to do of 100 megabytes per second. So we can show that reality and then leverage that into our plan. And of course, inform the development of other plans. We know not everyone has GIS capabilities or technical analysis. So we wanted to make that available for everyone so they can either go for grants or develop their own plans. So that's kind of how I see our plan developing right now, is providing all this data and then ripe areas for opportunity so people can take them like, hey, this is our area, we need this is the reality that we're seeing. So we took that to our board on April 6th, which was a couple weeks ago. Our next steps are, I think, as Lorelei said, checking in with our county, with our partners at the county, our jurisdictions, because we heard of multiple efforts going on in our county. And of course, we don't want to duplicate efforts. We want to be able to inform and leverage all the efforts so we can get a sound regional plan that helps everyone. And it's just not the same as someone else's, so we want to bring value to the table. And then so we met with Lorelei, and then we're going to be meeting with our other counterparts around the county as well. So that's kind of what's going on with SLOCOG's regional plan at the moment.
Thanks, Daniel. Are you doing any needs assessment data? Or are you just looking at speeds?
We're looking at speeds, but we're also wanting to get cost and affordability data as well. So right now, the internet service providers aren't required to report on the cost of their plans, but we know cost is a big issue that's going to be surrounding this as well. So not only getting the service, but being able to afford that service in the home as well. So that's another piece that we're going to be going for. So not necessarily needs assessment per se, but those are the two pieces we're going to be going for soon.
But okay, no, got it. I understood. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Bill, that's SLO County.
Any questions, any discussion to follow, any inquiries of anybody towards our presenters and speakers, or conclusions or summaries or observations? Tim.
I have one. And Maria and team, if you've been having other meetings, have you guys talked about some specific grants you may be going after, or the technology funds, or any of those, anything specific?
Bill's going to jump in and share a little bit again in the webinar. The technical assistance grants are releasing here in mid-May. Definitely focused on municipalities and digital inclusion. So that's where we're going to start. That's the start. So but without the other data for SLO County, we won't have enough information for anything else for a while, it sounds like.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you.
I have a question oh, go ahead.
Sorry, one other update from SLO County proper organization. Some of you may be aware that through the Rural Counties Consortium that the county is a member of, we signed on to the Golden State Connect Authority, JPA, which entitled us to receive benefits from that JPA, one of which being a broadband plan. The Golden State Connect Authority was pursuing a grant opportunity that would fund those broadband plans for all of the signatories to that JPA. And I believe that that grant was approved and authorized, but I'm still waiting to find out from the Golden State Connect Authority when that might occur. But for purposes of the county's broadband plan, it will be the unincorporated areas of the counties, specifically around unserved, underserved portions of the county that are relying on the rural broadband providers, the WISPs, things like that. So I certainly see that umbrella-wise, our plan covers the entire geographic portion of the county with all the municipalities within that doing their own plans. And I see a tie-in for county and city plan to come together, if not just to assure the blanket coverage, but also to do some benefit between the public agencies, which we're already doing now, but we don't have across the board with all of the agencies.
Absolutely. No, thanks, Paul, for bringing that up. We have talked with RCRC and have done a webinar with them, and familiar that that is going to be a great lift for the county once that gets started. So, and it will line up with open access and municipal owned broadband. So that it's exciting. That's exciting too. So there are a lot of things happening. Thank you for reminding us of that.
Paul, have they set expectations on the timelines? I know that RCRC is sitting on the Golden State Network, and they're part of the middle mile discussion. And we've seen middle mile maps that, so we can show you where the state is going to come in to slow and go and connect certain dots in there. But if RCRC is doing a much more comprehensive, bigger picture that is separate as an overlay to what the state's going to do, that would be exciting. That would be good news. So I guess it's a matter of just, is there a process they'll go through, an assessment they'll perform? Is it going to be a separate complementary, more local kind of network other than just what the Golden State Network is going to be?
I know they had identified some locations. Unfortunately, nothing in San Luis Obispo County had been identified. I believe it was something in either northern Santa Barbara County or Kern County, but it was sort of in that Cuyama 166 corridor area where it was going to tie like Taft to Cuyama or something like that.
Yeah.
And they've identified a number of those around the state. But being focused more on the strategic plan, I saw a timeline that they hope to get those started in the May-June timeframe, and it should be, I think, 14 to 16 months to complete those. I don't know if it's going to be the same consultant doing them for all the different counties, or if they're going to use multiple consultants to work on that. And it may even be some of the ones that would be responding to the city's RFPs.
Yeah. I think your knowledge is as good as ours at this point.
Well, except we do know about the build, the 166 build, Santa Maria to Maricopa. And it cuts through a small corner, but you're right. There's nothing except for some of the other stuff we saw today, some of the build out that they're hopeful for, that will go through the center of San Luis Obispo. But Lorelei?
I just had a quick question, since we have such a great group on the phone. I know we're all probably doing our own work to track grants and monies coming down the pipeline, and we're all doing that in different ways. I'm really curious if there's been any centralized effort to do that, shared Google Doc or something, because dates seem to be moving. The technical assistance grants were supposed to be, there were webinars that were posted and then they just kind of disappeared from the state's site. And I think you just mentioned mid-May, Maria, but I haven't heard anything from them. And I just keep visiting all these websites. So I'm curious, not just because I want to know what is our timeline, what are our milestones, what are our goals, but we're all doing this together. We're all putting in all this effort. It would be really neat if we had an idea of that. So then we can say, hey, let's not step on each other's toes. Let's get together and go for these grants together.
So the webinar today, and I know that we sent it out to everyone on this call. Some of the CPUC stuff did get taken down for rulemaking, but they have just finalized and released it, I believe, on the 21st or the 23rd. So just this week on the technical assistance grants.
Awesome.
Thing is going to be on again, broadband for all. It's going to be it's your best friend. The Broadband for All website, it has all of the information that you're talking about, and it's going to be able to provide, grants. I'll drop it in. It's the California Department of Technology. It'll explain sort of the process. It talks about there's grant and grant timelines. There's other tools that are going to share with you. Again, we've talked a lot within the consortium about public, the public sector and policy changes and policy conversations that everybody needs to have, and if there's a way to do policy alignment. So there's a lot of things that Spoke County can be working on separate from funding, because there's still some other things that there's still more data that you're all going to need probably before. But you should be able to access technical assistance. And here are the slides we just pulled from this morning. I'm going to pass it to you, Bill.
Perfect, thank you. I think my thought is that all the funding is going to be released and we're all working on efforts, but we haven't had a venue yet to say, okay, and here's how we're going to get together to bring our plans together to apply as a larger group. But I think that's part of you guys bringing us together and facilitating.
Yeah,
it's not on you to make us all work together and write a joint application.
But we'll help you. That's our role, is to help you. That's the CPUC pays us to help you understand those processes and timing. There's definitely a coordination for the region is definitely helpful. But again, there are things that you can do individually until then.
Also, Lorelei, please know that you do have a little bit more time. The state's new message is that the LATA funding, the local agency technical assistance funds, the application window won't open until sometime in June or July. So May, I know, is upon us, but it looks like it's been pushed back a couple months. So you've got some time, but also what's very important is that you should strategize, because each agency can either on its own apply for the 500,000 as part of the 50 million that the state is making available for LATA, or it can apply as part of a coalition of governments. Again, each county should really strategize, because obviously the more money that you can obtain by going on your own might be a better strategy. Again, it's something that you'll have to figure out for your county.
Thanks, Troy.
I wanted to ask a question about the Astound Grover Beach project. So one of the things that is coming, that appears to be a string for funding, is that participation in reduced rates for low-income households, which I want to compliment you guys. You did and built that in. I was curious at what point that came into the discussion. Is that something that was tied to funding for the project, or something you just did because it's the right thing to do?
I can jump on that, Kristen, I think, and you can fill in if I miss it. We have a program called Internet First, which is one we are a participant in. I think there are other ISPs in the country that also use it, but it's something we've actually done as a company as a whole for a long time. Digital West didn't do residential services at all, and so it's nice that Astound has about 75% of what they do is residential. So that enabled us to go in and do this entire bill for the city. And part of that is our Internet First participation, which is, I think it's $9.99 for internet, as long as they qualify with certain similar qualifications you would see with other things like school lunch programs or other reduced rate programs that they have. So it wasn't anything the city required. I think it was just something good that we both said, hey, that's great, and we want to see that happen, both the city and Astound.
Very cool. Kudos to you.
Any other questions? You've kind of queued up the rest of the agenda. I mean, it's going to flow very nicely. And so we'll keep moving. Technical assistance funding, I'm going to go back to the presentation I was at before. I had all these words and we don't need to read the words. But the presentation that we had, we just received, it was a roundtable, statewide roundtable. This was a fascinating picture that they presented. And it really, they spent a lot. This was a presentation by one of the commissioner's aides from the CPUC. And she was, and we touched on it earlier in the conversation of different models for public participation. And so the CPUC presented this slide. They said, here's 5 models. They referenced Chattanooga to Fullerton, you name it, different solutions for support. And I thought it was extremely well done. I've not seen it portrayed this way before. And the big signal here is, are you talking about it? Have you thought about it? Are you working on it? Is the conversation occurring everywhere about this kind of partnership? You know, if the conversation is not part of your organization, it should be, because here it comes. And so, and we're not asking you to do something different than, the money is going to be coming as well to be able to have this conversation and to participate in this conversation. It's not going to be above and beyond. It's going to be in addition to and funded. And so that's really some of the queuing up that we have to do in terms of the municipalities that we have right now, is where are you, where are you going to go and what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And that's got to be all done at the local level. And here come the funds that will be supporting that conversation to occur. So in Santa Barbara County, we just created a subgroup of city reps, and we've had one meeting of that group, and with that group, the plan is to be able to apply jointly to bring each municipality in the entire region this funding to engage in the conversation, not only in each of the cities and municipalities alone, but also at the regional level. And so you've got this crosstalk that will be occurring about how we're going to do what we're going to do locally, but how we're going to do what we're going to do regionally, and how to leverage each other's efforts in doing that. So that's where the technical assistance money is going. Jory's correct in terms of the timing. It's going to happen fast. It was expected, according to their website, in early to mid-May. It's now shifted to maybe 30, 45, 60 days, but it's happening this year. And if the tribal assistance grants that they've been modeled after are any indication, it could be within 60 to 90 days of when the application's filed. The funds could be arriving before the end of the calendar year. So this is a moving target, but it's moving fast. Paul?
Yeah. Does anyone know what the timeframes for some of these are going to be as far as obligating funding and executing? And the reason I ask is, last year the county received some ARPA funding, specifically around the broadband, water, wastewater, broadband kind of infrastructure projects. And with that grant, there were definitely some time limits between how long you had to obligate the funding, how long you had to complete the projects. And what we've run into, and I'm sure this is what everyone else is going to start to realize, there's only so few engineers, there's only so few contractors, there's only so much material to go around at the moment, and everyone is being flooded with this kind of money for these kind of projects. The likelihood of being able to get it all done in time seems like a bit of a challenge, and especially the follow-on money that's going to be provided. Is that going to be given more time because of the rush that's happening right now and how busy all the people are that can do something with it at the moment? They can only do so much. It's very difficult to take on more business.
Yep.
And it's not local, it's not state, it's nationwide.
Jory, you want to take a stab at that? I've got my 2 cents, but I know that you're following pretty closely, and it parallels a number of the conversations we're having.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations with the Golden State Network, actually, and NTIA, as well as the EDA. Everyone is saying these are the dates, and this is what we're shooting for, because we have to establish some goals. The word on the street, though, is that there is going to be some slippage, and we do believe that legislation is going to be passed that will extend some of these deadlines. But don't hold me to that. This is hearsay and this is hopeful thinking, but you are so right, Paul. There are many problems in the pipeline.
The words aren't on the slide, but your observations are correct, Paul. The capacity building is what we're trying to do. And it's been described as funding for capacity building. And, I think we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and, and get our hands dirty, training, educating, building, creating the competency, because you're right. There's not a lot of people that have the expertise that understand the stuff that we're talking about. It's a very, very complex area.
One thing I think that we all should just be aware of, we just need to go along with whatever is currently stated, but know that things may change.
Yep.
I know it's somewhat frustrating for many of us who are trying to plan our lives, and we have other project workloads that, obviously you're working on. But this is something that, will continue to evolve. Fortunately, well, maybe unfortunately, fortunately, the lot of funding has been postponed. So it's not going to be May, it'll be June or July. What we expect, we will see some slippage in the last mile funding from the state as well. Everyone is asking, why is it that why is the last mile money riding very soon on the coattails of the LATA funding, when you need at least 4 to 5 months in which to conduct your planning process before you can apply for last mile funding? So I think rational thinking will be applied, and we'll continue to see schedules adjust accordingly.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, the one last thing I'll add is what we've seen working with the design engineers is that given the timeframes and kind of everyone queuing up, waiting to get going on these projects, is in the meantime, costs are getting more expensive due to inflation and labor costs. So even if you were able to get going soon, the amount of money that you had allocated, you may find by the end of the project, costs have exceeded the amount of budget you had previously identified for the specifics of the grant. And at least for the one that I'm doing right now, my 5 locations may suddenly find themselves only being able to fund 4 of them because of the cost, overruns.
So Paul, we strongly recommend that whatever when you're doing your high level designs or your design engineering, always throw in at least a minimum of a 20% contingency. That'll help you with this inflationary period and the supply chain problems that we're having on materials. Yeah.
Actually, the same phenomenon is affecting just our roads projects and everything else that are going up 50, 75% a year over estimates. So
Any other discussion? This is fascinating because we're going to talk about it some more as we run into the middle mile discussion. Let me just preface this.
Bill, one more point on this. I'm sorry.
Sure.
It's just a little bit of more guidance for Paul and anyone else who's thinking that that they want to get it right, which is good thinking. You also, when you do go out with your RFPs and your competitive bidding processes, for whatever it is you're building broadband, it could be design engineering, it could be project management, it could be construction. You ask for either an MOU up front to lock in pricing while you're negotiating the contract, so that you don't slip, your project budget doesn't slip during the time that you're negotiating, and finalize the contract on pricing.
Good idea.
Thank you, Joey. I'm going to, George, give your hand.
Just a quick question. As I've been looking through this, and then from some of my own local experiences, this grant specifically states that it can be used for a lot of different things. One of them is including broadband strategic plans or business plans. But what I believe with some entities may be missing, I don't know specifically in each use case, is that policy at the supervisor level or the council level to guide staff. Is that adopted fully within each of these organizations, or is it subjective by each organization?
My observation, it's the latter at this point in time, but through all of the engagement we're talking about, you do want to standardize policy. You do want to get to have it somewhat uniform. So as you're crossing municipal boundaries, there's no surprises, no changes that, it's somewhat
Right.
uniform.
Seems like there's a lot of circular movement around not having a policy.
Maria?
Part of the policy discussion is huge. I mean, we've been sending out, encouraging policy alignment or encouraging policy adoption within certain types of policy adoption within general plans, so to keep it out of the political sphere, but so keep it as a priority, make sure it's, part of your discussion. But the other thing that's coming out fairly soon is that GoBiz, in partnership with CEDT, is developing a survey for our municipalities, for our jurisdictions, to find out what policies they have in place. So that'll be, I thought it was going to come out by the end of this month, but I haven't seen it yet. They were asking for some feedback. So again, there's multiple, there's multiple groups of us that are working to encourage the policy discussion as much as we're encouraging the other discussion, because the streamlining policies is the biggest burden to deployment. And we're meeting with telecoms, and they're basically saying, well, you could have one jurisdiction where a long run deployment might pencil out, but as soon as you run into a next one, it doesn't, because they have a whole different level or different requirements, and therefore then they abandon the project. And we've heard that from multiple large providers, not just one. So that's why that policy alignment and centralized planning can be so important, because and why I love that, even Atascadero, so all the cities are working together in Santa Barbara, but even having Paso to Atascadero, they can start having those conversations, and we can really start looking at what are the key policies that we do need to have lined up.
Yeah.
So
Maria, thank you for that, because my observation is, as the Broadband Consortium Pacific Coast overlaps on 3 separate metropolitan planning organizations.
Yeah.
And each of the requirements within each of those planning organizations is entirely different amongst the 3. And then the complexity of each individual county, each individual city or, unincorporated area, that becomes, I think, confusing, not only for the providers, but also for the staff, that they don't have a clear vision on what they're supposed to be driving
and
toward.
That's exactly, you're absolutely spot on, which is one of the reasons, again, while working with SBCAG in Santa Barbara has been really great, because we're working with a planner there and we're talking about centralized planning. Is that a model that would work? And part of that conversation is too, and we're having a webinar on this on May 12th, is a programmatic EIR for the county. And is there a way to centralize planning so that telecoms know what they're going to run up against if they're hitting those imaginary jurisdictional boundaries? So it's a huge conversation, and it's going to take a long time to sort of, get some of it solved. But there are some real basic things that we can all do with our cities in the county to develop just basic, information so that the telecoms kind of know what they're running up against.
It's very interesting. The whole hoopla around 5G actually did a lot of damage, especially for wireline connectivity. But on the other hand, it also did a lot of good. It got cities to wake up about implementing policy around wireless. And while they did that, they did a lot of work on Dig Once. So this needs obviously to be applied at every level. And when I say every level, I mean county, including utilities and cities. But then even within cities, each of the departments need to understand that they need to embed broadband as another utility in their everyday urban planning.
And I would just put a cap on that, Jory, if I may. it's about economic prosperity for the region. And I think that is a missing element from the policy discussion. How does that, not only from the ongoing business day to day of the counties, the cities, the municipalities, but peripherally, how does this help our economy at large? And I think that's the key part of the component here with the good policy. And fostering this conversation and having the ability to foster this conversation through this forum, I think will help in some ways align that. So I just want to thank Bill for all these years of conducting this forum and all the efforts that he's put in. It's been very helpful.
Thank you, George. Laura, your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you. Just to follow on some of this conversation, and perhaps this is too big of a question for today's discussion, but I was just wondering if there was, when we're talking about centralized planning or policies that we can enact at our various jurisdictions, what would be good to look at in terms of low-hanging fruit and then problems of medium complexity, or kind of the big issues, like you mentioned, the programmatic EIR, and or making sure that each department within a local or county government is thinking about broadband more as a straight up utility. So I was just wondering if there were examples of both the low-hanging fruit and kind of the bigger problems to tackle, and just as we start to think about what we can do within our jurisdictions on that.
Maria, you may have some thoughts. All attachments, permit streamlining. I mean, we are having candid conversations about pain points.
Bill, I can help if you.
Yeah, go ahead, Jory.
Well,
Go ahead, Maria,
okay.
first, and then Jory.
I think it's a great question. And there is an awesome bigger conversation definitely to have here, I think, within SLO County for sure around that, Laura. But there is low hanging fruit. And I'll send you the planning document again. But really it's the making sure there's a dig once policy at a minimum, or open trench policy that lines up. It's the same Caltrans, basically the state just told Caltrans they had to do the same thing. It's one of the first things to really make sure to know what the requirements are. And then making sure that like Bill said, and we've talked about, is and Jory and everybody, making sure that it's a part of your general plan discussion, that there's a placeholder as that starts to get built out. But go ahead, Jory.
I'm really glad, Maria, that you brought up the general plan. There are some very thoughtful thinkers in some cities that are redoing their general plans right now, and they're including broadband as utility in those general plan updates. Of course, cities don't typically do this, but every 20 years, but it's important that broadband be included, even for constructing things like parking structures, for smart city applications related to congestion management, vehicle management, traffic management, et cetera, and carbon emissions. Anyway, I won't get into the weeds, but other areas that I think that are important in answering this question is your capital projects budgets. Every city has a capital project budget, and you look forward 3 to 5, some cities even 10 years, and you look at what you're doing in your capital projects. You're renewing your streets, your sidewalks, your traffic signals. You are building bridges, you are amending bridges, you are widening the right of way. Anything that you do in your capital projects budget, you should be looking at that on a regular basis, yearly, and someone should be looking at each of those projects in either public works or IT should take a look at it and say, is there a broadband component that can be added to this capital project budget before that capital project budget is finally verified. In the cities that I used to work for, I fortunately was able to get into that signature stream and on the capital projects committee, and there were many projects in the public right of way that enabled me to do dig once kinds of practices. Also, in the permitting process, anytime a permit comes for an encroachment in your public right-of-way across the counter, someone should be going ding, 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 ding. This is an opportunity to joint build with whoever it is that's going to be opening the public right of way, putting in either an open trench, directional bore, micro trenching, whatever it might be, that would enable you to put fiber and or conduit in the ground. Development agreements. Development agreements are very key. Please know that your planners and your city attorney's office, community development, are always working with developers on either renewing projects or parcels in your community for new uses or building new ones. And as they do, there are what's called mitigations. These mitigations often come in the form of tree plantings or parks, open spaces, widened sidewalks, pedestrian right pedestrian rights of way, and other eco-friendly uses. Broadband should be considered as a mitigation as well. So getting departments to understand permitting, development agreements, joint trench and joint build opportunities, capital project work that you're doing in public works on a regular basis anyway. These are all big opportunities to build incrementally and opportunistically and save millions of dollars. You can cut your costs by at least a third or more.
Really quick, if I may just add, and I'm trying to see if I can get them to come speak, but Santa Cruz uniquely just combined their public works and planning department, the county, for the purposes of broadband deployment. They basically said, we've got to figure this out. So they smushed them together. I'll see if I can find that article and drop it into the chat. Really interesting model.
Ryan Chong.
I wanted to actually go back to George's questions. I have kind of a red flag waving over my head on the use of the term policy. So I hear several people, I think, using different interpretations of that. You know, one being, is there clear policy direction from a governing body to tell staff we want to do broadband something? I'm hearing a second interpretation of that as in governments across geographies need to have matching requirements to make it easier to build and permit for those who would install it. So when you're going to a different city and now all of a sudden you're paying a different rate and you have to be an inch lower in the ground and things of that nature, and standardizing that. And I'm also hearing a third one of there may need to be changes either at the state law level, the PUC level, or the California Department of Technology level, you know, regarding funding and timelines and that kind of thing. All three of those are issues, but they are separate issues, and I wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, your observation is correct, and yeah, my answer is yes. Yeah, yeah, that is the same word, but it's interpreted at three different levels. Yeah, I don't know if those are all important, and they all apply. And they're all relevant to the conversation, which contributes to the complexity of it all.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I'll say from a Moore perspective, and I have a unique luxury of having very clear policy direction from my city council. I also don't fear the state. I mean, I'm confident we can ram through changes to state law. You know, as cities collectively, we can lobby to do that. I don't worry about that, but I do worry about the geographic differences. That a lot of these, you know, there's something as simple as, hey, we've got conduit that the county owns, and then it goes through 3 cities, and they all have different lawyers talking different lease terms and different rental rates. And I mean, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true, Brian. And by the way, kudos to you that your Moore Park master plan is in Broadband for All on the website. You probably noticed that. But I think
great.
Can I, and kudos to you, George, for the other night, Monday night, by the way.
I appreciate that. I don't want to get into that, but my observation is based on these conversations and Brian being 100% accurate the way he framed that. As you introduce the concept of a JPA, without clear, it's my opinion, and I'm an outsider to government, I'm commercial private enterprise. But my observation is without staff having clear direction and authority from a council or a supervisor level, I think that they're at a disadvantage when they look at things like GPA, when they look at things like cord cutting and general fund losses from, the switch from cable franchises or traditional POTS line depletion, as we look to more utilization of over-the-top services and riding on top of unregulated broadband. And I think that without clear guidance from the council, having that master policy and direction, I think that staff becomes lost, private enterprise becomes lost. We don't know how to solve these problems. And I'll just depart from there, and thank you very much.
I think, George, in reflection on what you just said and what Brian, brought up, I think it's probably very key for all of the cities in the state, in the counties in the state, to consider broadband-friendly policies. But the most important is dig once. But second behind that is a smart city policy or a fiber-friendly policy that says every new building that is constructed must have the connections that enable multiple entrants, not just for the incumbents, but for other entrants to be able to make that building whole and to connect it to the digital world. That is really very, very key. Let me share one other thing, and I'm sorry, I sometimes sound like I'm preaching, but this is really very important. All of you know, or maybe you don't know, but you should know that the state has recently passed SB 378. And 378 is going to change your world if you work in public works. It's all about microtrenching. And the state is now saying that cities cannot prohibit microtrenching within their communities. I recommend strongly that all of you work with your public works people and get your head wrapped around microtrenching very quickly.
Folks, we got to keep moving. I'm going to move. We got a whole nother topic that we want to get through before we get into the roundtable. So if we can do that, I'd like to. And Jory, I'm going to cue you up again in a second here. I do want to talk about the middle mile, as we have talked about the last mile in the communities and capacity. And where I want to go is, and Jory, your observations can cap this off, is share with you, can everybody see this chart of the state of California Golden State Network that I've just, let's see if I can enlarge this to full screen mode. We've gone through an evolution in the last several months of what this network could be, should be, look like. This is the image that's now about a week to 10 days old in terms of public sharing. And they've broken it down into various regions. The previous slide is Jory's creation, having gone through and talked to stakeholders throughout the entire Ventura County. And, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, it seems. And we had certain principles that we wanted to maintain, and in a strong belief for interconnecting communities. And it's a very robust plan. Looking at what is being pushed back now from the state, they've come a long way. The first one was just connecting dots in areas of needs. This one, now that the Golden State Network, scenic, the adults are in the room, they're starting to talk about loops that we can have. So there's interconnect. So if something gets severed, you're not going to lose support of the network. And it's a more solid design. I do believe that in Ventura County, it probably satisfies about, in terms of the paths and the overlays and the alignment, 60% of what our design locally in the South here has been. On the other hand, if you look at where it goes in Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo counties, I think it falls way short. And I think that that's not a bad thing. It's just an alignment purposes. That's what the state wants to do, what the state deems necessary. And it leaves open a big conversation for the rest of us to have at the local level. Much of the principles that we sought to establish here when we designed the network in the South was the need to interconnect municipalities at different locations. So if one side went down, another side would stay connected. And I think that that applies. When you get up into the San Ynez Valley, when you get into SLO County and you have adjoining cities, you want these municipalities to be interconnected. The current network, though, it completely bypasses the city of Santa Barbara. You know, and there are, as you get above Ventura County, you can see where along the coast there, it gets rather sparse. And so when you start looking at this, the 8 cities in Santa Barbara County and the cities up in San Luis Obispo County and the interconnections between those cities, there's a conversation that still needs to occur. And so it's good that we have a network that's making sense. It's good that we can have something that we can align to, but it's establishing now clear lines of what is of local interest and the local conversations that need to occur, and what is of the state's interest and the state conversations that are occurring. So I think it's a mixed blessing. I think it's good that we have something that's beginning to make sense. I think it's good that we now know what we're going to have to do that's going to go above and beyond what the state is doing. It's just a fascinating evolution, and it's moving in the right direction, but it's also showing some of the work that we still have ahead of us. Jory, do you want to comment on any of this?
Yes, thank you, Bill. Please know that what the state is working on right now for the middle mile is still in flux. Bill has done a really good job of representing the process that they're following. Of course, there was the comment period initially from the proposed mappings. They've significantly improved their website. And we suggest, Bill and I suggest that you go to their website and make sure that you're following this. I would probably look at their website about every 2 weeks because this is so fluid, it's changing on a regular basis. On the call this morning with the CDT, the CPUC, and the Golden State Network, Eric Hunsinger, who is the main designer of the network, is still working with various communities up and down the state of California. Many of us are working with Eric to help feed him connectivity of existing networks and proposed networks to the Golden State Network. And the Golden State Network is actually changing as we speak to be able to accommodate those connections. And in some cases do joint build. I mean, I think a really good example is in the Coachella Valley, where the Coachella CVAG, the Association of Governments, is actually building a $32 million traffic signal control system. And through that process, they've invited the state middle mile to work with them and do joint build. So they're creating an entire loop around the Coachella Valley. You should be thinking about how you might be able to partner with the Golden State Network. So that is a preface to what I wanted to say about what's happening in Ventura County. And that is, we're watching very closely what is being proposed with the Golden State Network and how that will overlap with what the county is intending on doing. As you've probably seen this map before, this is from speaking to over 140 individuals through various, county organizations, water districts, economic development managers, IT managers, community development managers, public works directors, etc. But this is basically what we're planning on building for digital inclusion and also for economic development within the county of Ventura. So it just turns out that on the 126 that you see in purple, blue, and red in the north portion or upper part of this diagram, part of that is being built by the state as well. So we're hoping to invite the state to consider partnering with us like they are in other regions in Fresno County, and as, like I said, in Coachella Valley, in San Bernardino County, to work with the County of Ventura in building this for their digital inclusionary needs for the areas of Piru, of Saticoy, El Rio, Somas, and Nyland Acres. And that would be the first portion of the build. And so we are, like all of you, the County of Ventura is considering going after the LADA money, the technical assistance funds, in which to do design engineering for this particular segment that you see in purple. We have chosen this segment in purple. It is not on Caltrans right away. It is on the VCTC, or Ventura County Transit Agency right of way, which is the North Santa Paula rail line. They are granting the county rights to use that easement to do plowing, which is a very economical approach to implement broadband. I won't get into too much of the weeds, but please know that this map, which represents various construction types, red being new underground build, blue, dark blue being aerial build on poles, purple being plowing, light blue being joint build with water districts, green being revitalization of traffic signal interconnect systems and making them available, or should I say suitable, for pulling fiber instead of copper, and yellow being existing fiber networks, is really the best approach for all of you to take, because we started out, this network was going to, if it was going to be all new build without using these various strategies to reduce the cost, it was going to be $38 million. We've been able to reduce the cost to $22 million. So please be very strategic, not only in where you build, but how you build, and make sure that you're talking to who you need to within your counties, within your regions. Look at this regionally and look at all your potential partners, your transportation agencies, your utility companies, including water, because joint utility builds are very, very common these days. And of course, you want to look at your service providers to see what they're doing, because you want to build along with them. Astound, I don't know if Tim is still on this call, but Astound is very open to those kinds of conversations, as are others. Hi, Janice. And so we do recommend that you make good use of existing assets that are in the ground or that are aerial or poles, vertical poles that will allow you to readily, more cost effectively implement broadband. Bill, back to you.
Janice, thoughts that you want to talk about from your perspective? You've been following this pretty closely as well.
No, I think it's important for cities to look out to partnerships with different utilities that are open to it. And as Tim mentioned, when we were Digital West alone, we could do a certain amount, but we have a very large team of partners in the company that are excited about the expansion projects that we've been working on for many years. We also are still focused on the commercial side, he and I, in our efforts, but we work very closely with the residential teams, and we bring them into projects like Grover Beach, and they help us to make it happen. So really just, I mean, consider us as a resource, and other telecom carriers. I'm not just trying to do a soapbox for us, but the Ventura, SLO, Santa Barbara County area is something that we're very, very much interested in expanding upon.
Jory, I had one other comment I wanted, and I don't want to display my bias too strongly, but yeah, everything we've said is right on. But what I got this morning and have picked up this last week is the statewide network is going to be built by Caltrans, is what I'm hearing. And and it looks like those timelines are slipping. What thought I heard this morning is it's going to take 18 to 24 months just to do planning before we can get to building a network from a Caltrans standpoint. And one of the big fears we've had all along about this conversation is if Caltrans is building it, wow, it could take a while. And at the same time, what we're talking about locally, we're doing the grants, the money shows up, we want to build. I mean, Terry is about as impatient as they come when it comes to just break ground. Let's make it, let's go. Can you reconcile approaches in terms of what we know is happening at the state level versus what we want to do at the local level?
Yeah, please know that, well, there's what the state is planning on doing, and please know that there are consulting agencies, there's construction companies, there's design and engineering companies and others. It's not just Caltrans that is going to build this. It is going to be an effort which is obviously done by all of you, and all of you are going to hire the industry. And the industry has a lot of players. This is it's a golden state network and a golden state opportunity to create jobs. And these companies, I speak to them almost every day. They call me and say, can we partner? Can we work with you? Who are your clients? And where's the state building? And what do you know? And how do we get the money? There is going to be a big muster of talent, resources, and jobs to do this, to build this. And it's really up to us and to help the Golden State Network do this, because if we don't do this right, the industry is sitting back and is going to say, oh, we'll let them fail and we'll pick up the pieces on, for pennies on the dollar. That's not going to happen. So there's lots of players in this. And please know, Caltrans cannot build this themselves. Caltrans already had a very full and impacted schedule going into this. And they are going to be, I'm looking forward to this because it's coming up within the next 2 months, what are called open calls. Caltrans is going to put out open calls to construction companies, to engineering companies, to design this for them. And they've already started in putting out feelers to the industry for the 18 initial projects that they've come up with in their build strategy. They're now working, Eric Hunsinger is now working on a list of 18 other low-hanging fruit projects as we speak. Please know that we're going to see open calls. What an open call is, it says from Caltrans, we can't do this internally. We need you to contract with us to do the engineering and to do the construction. So they're going to look to the private sector companies and consulting agencies to do all of this work. So it's still a concern, but it is being addressed.
It's a moment in time. It's going to be interesting to watch. Any other questions on this topic before we move on? I think we're right on time. Oh, need to spend some time here though. And Maria, I'm going to ask that you talk a little bit about what's going on in the Santa Barbara County. This is going to be a healthy conversation as well, the whole last mile approach. And what's been occurring in the last few weeks is public outreach meetings, engagement meetings with each of the communities. What we've figured out in terms of where we're starting with municipalities, we've been doing speed testing, we've been collecting data on surveys, but there's a 3-step process that we want to be able to walk through each of the communities with, where we convene, and then based on stakeholders coming together, we come up with strategies, and based on that, we, in terms of deliverable in Santa Barbara County, we want to provide a regional picture, but then break it down into a municipal action plan in terms of where to go next and how to align themselves with all of these initiatives amongst the municipalities as well. But there's a whole digital inclusion piece. And with that as my cue, lead in, here's Maria to talk about some of the meetings they've had in the last week or two, and last night and the day before. And
yeah,
what would you add to this? This is a very exciting model, if you will.
Yeah, so the model that we are using in Santa Barbara is we're doing the, like Bill said, we're collecting the needs assessment, we're doing the strategy, sort of like the regular strategy work. We're doing our direct outreach to the communities, this isn't our city manager meetings, our presentations to city councils, we're doing all that. But in addition, we're doing direct outreach in every single municipality, and then the unincorporated areas for a total of 14 meetings. And the focus of those meetings is talking about the project and the importance of the concept of middle mile and final mile. But why are we doing all this work? It's for digital inclusion, digital equity. It's basically to close the gap, get people connected, make sure it's broadband for all. So we're pulling with the help of Econ Alliance, is doing a lot of the heavy lifting and getting panelists to come that represent in Santa Maria. On Tuesday, we had Dignity Health, we had educators, we had Boys and Girls Club, People Self-Help Housing. And some of the questions that we're discussing is how do the people that you work with connect to the internet? What are their challenges? What do we need to be considering as we look at, while we're looking at infrastructure, but we're also now looking at the people aspect of it. So we're having really great conversations so far. We've been in Santa Maria, Lompoc. We're probably going to have to go back to Lompoc. We were in Santa Ynez Valley last night. Really, really interesting conversations. And there's some very specific themes that are coming out that will be helpful for the municipalities in that final plan product. So, getting the people together to develop those partnerships, because it is at a community level. And we heard that again today in the webinar, is that each community is unique and has some very unique needs. So making sure that communities are gathering at that community level to identify what their issues are, what their hurdles are, and who are going to be their key partners as we're talking about digital inclusion. So that's where the convening piece of this process within the strategic plan is. And then that aligns in alignment with the assessment and all the other resources we're putting together. Then once this plan is completed, because that's the big question that SBCAG keeps having for us in the cities is like, okay, great. Well, we'll have this product. What are we going to do with it? Hopefully through the relationships and the networks, the literal people networks that we're making through this process, then the execution does become collaborative, because right now it's very overwhelming. The cities are sharing with us that they don't have capacity, they don't have staff, nor do they ever anticipate having a broadband person necessarily. So how can we work together and alleviate some of those concerns while we're really focusing on the needs of the community around digital inclusion, digital equity, basically the adoption piece. So it's, how are the cities participating? Well, they're engaging, but they really, at the end of this, they are the ones that are going to really allow residents access to the internet. You're going to be the partner that's helping them. So it's exciting. It's very, very fascinating to hear the people, and engagement's actually pretty good. We had about 30 people show up in Santa Maria for the conversation, which was great, and a lot of great questions afterwards as well. So we'll see how it goes out through the rest of it. We'll be sharing the model and the information with the California Emerging Technology Fund, who we meet with every other week around this whole issue around digital equity and inclusion, because it's a real boots on the ground approach. So it's we're just seeing, it's pretty exciting actually. So
from a process standpoint, I feel like we're tilling the soil. We're just getting it ready, and we're planting some initial seeds. But the roles at the very top of the chart, we really we're looking to industry to deliver capacity, and to be able to keep it private, keep it robust in terms of innovation, to be able to continue to keep bringing the best and greatest that the industry has. From a municipality standpoint, there are things that, from a business standpoint, conduit, you name it, we want it to be able to provide the safety net where it doesn't make sense, and to provide access where it's really hard and not necessarily cost effective. With those as entry criteria, as we till the soil, plant the seeds, you get certain outcomes, and that's what the model shows and what we're trying to. That's the method to our madness, and we're getting a lot of good traction with it at this point. So we do thank the municipalities that are having the conversation and talking and making this work. We also appreciate all the providers that are giving us great feedback and participating as well. And so we'll just continue to move in this direction and, looking forward to it. Any topics? We got about 12 minutes left for our roundtable. I'll mention real quickly, Smart City. I'm going to put this slide as a reoccurring item. And just probably it'll be a glimpse of technology, or it'll be a nugget here or something that's happening there. I want to include it on a monthly basis, just as sometimes it'll be 5 minutes, other times it'll be 20 or 30 minutes, but just letting you know at this particular slide on this particular meeting that it's going to be a reoccurring item that we talk about as we get to the roundtable, and more information to come. So with that, in the next 12 minutes, we'll wrap up in the meeting on time. Any updates that we want to share with one another, the group? Brian, you're always good for an update from Moore Park in terms of the direction you're going, especially in the area. Speaking of Smart City, there's always Moore Park.
Yep. And actually, I'll do that second. But first, I wanted to share with the group that last month we did present to our council our Meet Me Room market study. Long story short, that concluded that it will only be financially viable for the city to do that if either the state or county middle mile network passes by where we were looking to build the Meet Me Room. Bill mentioned that Ventura County got kind of 60% good news and 40% bad news when the state released their map last week, or their updated map for their Golden State net. Unfortunately, we were in the 40% loser category. The run that was previously proposed to run through downtown Moore Park adjacent to our Civic Center was removed. Based on current analysis of it, we are not planning on investing a lot of lobbying effort to get that added back in. Our sense is that it would be an uphill battle that is not likely to succeed, and we'd rather try to focus those energies on something that we could get a win. But we'll keep monitoring it, but not a lot of hope there. We are still working with the county, which is the other trigger for us to get funding for their network, and that one is very much still alive. On the Smart City side of things, we have entered into a contract with a startup, OBSmart, OBSMRT, no A, and they are cutting edge, essentially a startup doing object sensors, and this is part of our Smart City stuff. So we got the contract, we're finalizing scoping. We've actually had several field meetings to make this work. But the Smart City cutting edge technology we're trying is to use object sensors as distinct from cameras, as distinct from still photography, but things that you can imagine are smaller than your fist, weigh a couple ounces, you stick them someplace. They need no power and they need no Wi-Fi or cell access. And they can sense things. So what we're looking at is counting cars, trucks, pedestrians, and dogs, and also using that to calculate speeds. So one area, we have a unique state highway here that runs through Moore Park. We're counting gravel trucks specifically. The other one is, and I'm sure all of our jurisdictions have this issue where someone says, or some neighborhood says, people are driving way too fast down our neighborhood. We want stop signs, we want speed bumps, and which creates a lot of other problems when you do that. But the standard MO for all of these jurisdictions and all of these communities is we take PD and we enforce the heck out of that neighborhood for about a week, very visibly. And the theory is that that people will behave, right? So definitely when there's 2 motor units sitting there on the sidewalk, people slow down. We know that. But then when they go away, do people go right back up to cruising at 35, or is it what we think, where they stay better behaved because they're unsure if there's law enforcement there, and then over time they go back up to their bad behavior and speeding to neighborhoods, right? Well, if we wanted to actually calculate this, we don't really have subtle ways of doing it. It's putting someone out there with a radar gun. We could put the counters across the street at a fixed distance, but people know what you're doing when you do that. This little thing on a street light that no one sees will get actual data. So what we're planning to do is to assess this response. So we're going to get a week's worth of data saying before we do enforcement targeting, people are averaging 32 miles per hour in a 25 zone, and then a week of enforcement and say, oh, look, they're all going 22 now, and then leaving them up for a week after that and seeing if it goes to 27 or it goes to 29 or it goes right back up to 32, right? It's a set of data we've never been able to capture before, but it was a real world question that we had. And we're looking at deploying those in about a month. They're actually literally programming the AI right now to calculate speed and whatnot. But it's a cool smart city thing that we're excited to be a part of. And it is absolutely a direct result of our broadband and smart city planning efforts. So we're looking forward to that.
We're looking forward to future reports on that topic. That's great. Any other updates? Things that we can share for the good of the order? Jory?
Bill, I don't know. If the group is interested, I do a lot of webinars to a lot of agencies, to a lot of associations, public works, IT, community development, etc. I'm offering to share some of my slide decks with all of you and some of the summaries that we've prepared for local agency technical assistance funding and funding for last mile as well. And of course, I know I have email distribution lists. I'm sorry, but you're not all on them. So I'd like to get the word out. If that's something that we could do here, I'd be very happy to do it.
We'll be happy to take you up on that offer. We'll do that.
Okay, Bill, I'll forward you the materials for you to forward to everyone else. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And there's Nikki Mays.
Hi, Bill. Long time no see. I missed last month's meeting. I had another conflict, but yeah, Santa Paula does have an update. So we finally met in January with Spectrum, which is our main provider here. And then just last week, we finally got a hold of someone at Frontier. So Frontier's been installing fiber throughout town for the past few months. So we finally found our government affairs rep. And we met with him last week and it was really productive. He shared the plans for Santa Paula, basically said they're planning to cover the whole town. And I think they're probably about 75% done now. There's some newer neighborhoods that they haven't reached yet just because it's harder to get the fiber there. They don't want to dig up the roads there, but most of it is going in aerially. And I think my biggest priority now is working on ACP awareness and just spreading those materials. And Frontier, I need to follow up with him. He said he would send me some stuff that they have specifically, but I might just have to go out on my own and just create some materials, see what the government has for us. But just letting people know that that exists, that that's out there, because Spectrum and Frontier both, they said that they could call, customers could call Frontier and they would help them sign up for the ACP one-on-one just like that. But I know that Frontier has a history of not so great customer service, so I'm not sure how true that is. But they have packages and offers that would basically give people free internet if they qualify for the ACP program. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing right now. Broadband's definitely still kind of not the #1 priority for council. Andy's definitely still very involved and interested in it, but kind of just on the back burner, kind of just, you know, like Brian and Moore Park, trying to see what the county's plans are for their middle mile plan. Yeah.
Nikki, I want to thank you again publicly for all the work you did on our SCAG grant and the vehicle miles traveled and the GHG and, you know, the interviews that you did of people in the community to get data about broadband usage. It was vital. And it sure got us out of a precarious spot. You saved our lives. So
I'm glad it was fun to give people an incentive to do an interview or a survey, to have those gift cards. I've never been in that position before. So I was like, please, I'll give you this free item if you talk to me. So it was nice.
I did get a couple calls after your Frontier meeting, and you know, the counsel I gave is, you know, if you recall, the model the consortia had was a 3-legged stool. One leg was infrastructure, another one is inclusion, another one is this smart city innovation. And I said, okay, you know, they're basically saying we're going to have fiber in all the houses. Now what? Our job is, you know, we've got broadband. And I said, no, not really. We've got to get to this community, you know, inclusion piece. We've been talking about the interconnections and, you know, creating a community network, anchor institutions. I mean, there is this role of municipalities that, you know, we have to explore and do that. And then you've got the smart city innovation stuff that, you know, Jory talked about so well. And so we've got one leg of the stool, not the other two. And that's where the conversation needs to go next. Congratulations, by the way, on that one leg. That's a huge accomplishment. But it's just the starting point. And that's the message I want to take back to council is, okay, let's move into the next part of the conversation.
Right. Yeah.
Bill, do you think we should be distributing the VMT GHG study? from
I think we
SCAG?
should. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
You have a copy of that, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Sasha, we need to put that in our upcoming missive as the copy. I don't think when it was published and finalized, I don't think we've put it out there in our weekly updates. And so it's a magnum opus. It's a pretty significant document. And Magellan was the team that pulled a lot of the inputs together, all of our inputs together, and published it into making sense of it all. And we appreciate the work that you and your team did on that, Jory.
Yeah, I think it's a significant effort. I hope it's not the last of its kind on that particular topic, because transportation projects really should contribute to broadband expansion.
I can't tell you how many cities, you may know the number off the top of your head, that are in SCAG, but they were managing the inputs of 4 consortia, and it was herding cats. There were moments I was wondering whether we were going to get this project to completion, and it has a bow on it. There'll be press releases went out last week in certain areas. I know that we're going to be putting some out in our area this week, and so everybody is feeling pretty good about how it turned out. So, any other topics with 1 minute to spare? All right. Hey, thank you so much. We'll look forward to talking in between now and the next meeting, and we'll look forward to an update from the Santa Barbara folks for the next meeting. It's their turn next month, and we just appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to our continuing conversation.
Everybody.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Mm-hmm.